Assalamu alaikum everyone. You're witnessing all the glitches. I think that makes it a bit funny and interesting. Thank you so much for coming in on Saturday afternoon. We welcome you to the panel that is titled Factory as Muse. And it's a panel that brings together panelists that have worked on this really incredible factory project where 18 artists came together to respond to a factory space in Sundar Industrial Estate. And they had access to the space, materials, and human resource. It was a huge, magnanimous space with almost unlimited resources. And so this presentation will talk about that. With me, we have the curator, Rameesha, Azeem. We have the publication editor, Emaan, Maqbool. We have Quddus, Mirza, the art critic, who also wrote on the project. And we have Ayaz, Jokhio, one of our very senior artists. So I'll introduce each one of them, and then we'll have a 10-minute look at a summary of the project, and Rameesha will take you through. But I'll introduce all the panelists. I'll start with Quddus Mirza. Quddus Mirza is an artist, art critic, and independent curator. He recently retired as the head of department as professor at the National College of Arts, Lahore, where he did his BFA before acquiring an MA in painting from the Royal College of Art, London. Mirza has shown extensively in numerous distinguished group exhibitions, along with several solo exhibitions held in Pakistan and the UK. He has also curated a number of exhibitions, including India, Switzerland, and the UK. Mirza is an art critic with a regular weekly column appearing in Pakistan's major newspaper, The Muse, and regular column on art called Letters from Pakistan in Art India, and in Depart, a publication based in Bangladesh. He's also worked for Dawn, Herald, Himal, Libas, Contemporary, and Flash Art. He is the co-author of the book 50 Years of Visual Arts in Pakistan, and has extensively written essays on Pakistani art in different international catalogues and publications. He is also the editor of the online magazine Art Now Pakistan. Ayaz Jokhio, thank you for coming. He is our asset. He is a pride for contemporary art in Pakistan. Very prolific, very dynamic. One of the most intelligent and sought after artists. One of my top 3. He incorporates diverse media and techniques, ensuring he cannot be defined by a single style. His work has been shown extensively in numerous group and solo exhibitions nationally and internationally, with residencies in Japan, Germany, and Switzerland, Hong Kong, USA, UK, and Pakistan. He was also the recipient of the Academy Schloss Solitude Transdisciplinary Artist Residency, awarded by a prestigious foundation in Stuttgart, Germany. He also teaches at the Beacon House National University. Then we have the curator, Rameesha Azeem. A very bright, young, talented, promising individual who is a graduate of the Beacon House National University and is the curator of the Factory project. But that's not her first project. She also curated her inaugural project at the Lahore Biennale, Collateral, in 2000. It was a collateral at the Lahore Biennale in 2020. She is also the recipient of the Gasworks residency, the 2022 one, very recent, and she has also just recently opened her first solo exhibition at a very new space in Phase 8, a gallery called Hum, and the name of the exhibition is My Word Afloat. She is also a gold medalist in her undergraduate and Dean's Honours list, and has had 2 group shows, one in Islamabad at Contemporary 2.0 and a show in Alhambra called Musalsal. Emaan, our publication editor, is a published writer based in Lahore, Pakistan. She has a degree in cultural studies from the Beacon House National University. Emaan works as a digital marketing strategist and entrepreneur with a traveling makeup studio. She writes both fiction and non-fiction, and her work can be viewed in various publications. She has been writing poetry from a very young age, and The Factory, it will be her second publication. So before we begin, and for people who were not able to visit The Factory, which was a show recently concluded at the Sundar Industrial Estate, we will run through a 10-minute presentation, and Rameesha Azeem will take us through, and then we will have a discussion around all the works. So there's a little glitch. We don't have sounds. There's a sound problem, and hence the delay. So yeah, we'll try to do without the sound.
This is a work by Ayaz Jokhio. It was displayed at the chemical plant at Sundar Industrial Estate, the factory where the exhibition was held. The work is titled Do Kadam Ka Fasla. Sir Ayaz Jokhio has been working with puppetry in his previous exhibition at Karachi Binale, and he actually inspired from that. He made these two shoes mechanically engineered to walk like a person on their own. The rawness of this kinetic sculpture is inspired by the factory's rawness, and it was displayed right in front of the chemical plant's entrance, as if someone's walking out, and if you're standing in front of the entrance, you would see the footsteps coming towards you.
Yeah, can I interrupt and intervene, Rameesha? This is one of my favorite works, and I'd only like to say that it's called Do Kadam Ka Fasla, and it has multiple meanings. One being that it is about the shoe factory, so very, very direct relation, and second is that it's the formal kind of relationship of Do Kadam Ka Fasla, and the third is that it's that kind of fasla that never ends, it keeps going on and on. वो कदम चलते रहते हैं, but आप कभी पहुंच ही नहीं सकते हैं. So this work really was one of my favorites.
It was also reposted by IWW, so let me add that. Okay, so this is another work by a young artist, Ali Sharik Jamali. He was one of those artists who actually stayed at the factory for a longer period of time. He actually studied the material that is PU soul grade material that he has used to make flower pots. He made molds at the factory, and he casted it at the factory. He designed the sunflower stems digitally, and had it CNC cut at an aluminum sheet at the factory, and PU, the same material was used to again make his flowers, and it was assembled and then displayed over here at this infrastructure that we have at the factory. I, along with the artist, decided to display it above the ground at a pedestal-like space. I feel that this work integrates very nicely with the factory's infrastructure. And these are about 100 pieces that he made. This is the detail of the flowers. This is a poll by Hassan Mushtaba, another participant at the factory exhibition. He used pipes that were present at the factory that were scraps, and he welded them together to formulate a 75 feet long pole, which went 10 feet under the ground and was held by a crane on a right angle to be 60 feet above the ground, and it has a searchlight on top of it. It was displayed at a green garden-like place inside the factory. This is another work by Hassan Mushtaba. These are 4 well-like structures created with barrels. The artist was inspired by The artist was inspired by modulation, hence the title.
Is it working? Hello? Can you hear me?
So the artist was inspired by the idea of modulation. So this is an 18 feet tall barrel structure, which he created, ranging from 16 feet of diameter till 10 feet diameter. So it closes down to 10 feet. It starts from 16 feet and then it closes down towards 10 feet. The artist created a circular form of structure because of the linear, very crisp industrial structure of the factory. He enjoyed putting in some color and the curvy, linear infrastructure that was again immersive and tunnel-like. So this is another work by the same artist, Hassan Mujtaba. He brought in chandeliers by outside of the factory. They were incomplete chandeliers that he dropped in a warehouse that was present again at the factory, and it became a very surreal, peaceful, immersive, again, and another immersive installation by the same artist. Can you please play the video? So this is a video work by Faiz, another artist at the factory. He worked with the labor workers present at the factory. He engaged with them regularly, and he decided to transcribe my curatorial note into Urdu. And the labor workers were told to repeat after the artist the curatorial note that they did not understand what they were saying, and it was displayed again at the same at the site of the factory storage space. This is Fazan Naveed's work. This is 30 feet long. That is about the height. So the artist measured the height of the chemical plant from the roof to the ground, and he actually brought in a tree that was exactly the same size, and it was displayed in the middle of chemical plant where it was hung by So it was hung by, the artist was in conversation with the mechanical engineers at the factory, and cranes, and it was mechanically engineered structure which would hold the weight of the tree into a very delicate way, and very little of the mechanics were shown. So the next, another work by the same artist is this aluminum tree that the artist made outside of the factory and brought it in to be displayed. It is a cast of a real tree in aluminum, and it was welded at site. This is another work, another magnanimous work by an artist, Jokhio. The title is Art for All. It was, the artist was at his residency in Denmark, and he sent me the files that were printed at the factory, where it was printed from the same space where the rest of the boxes of the factory are printed, and it was displayed at the site where the storage boxes after the production are displayed. So in this installation, not only did the artist and I discussed that the boxes were important, but the boxes actually encapsulating and making the whole space a work, a complete work, that was more important. And not only that, the artist actually focused on writing every detail on the box, and these were takeaway boxes at the factory. This is a work by Anam Babar and Matt Cushion. They used EVA sheet scrap material and reconstructed it in a manner where they explored color, composition, shape, and size of their sculptures. This is a work by Sabah Khan. The title of the work is Pak Khawateen Painting Club Shoes for Expedition. As the title suggests, Sabah Khan made her shoes, designed, made, and created the shoes at the factory along with the shoe designers present at the factory site, and she wore them to her expedition. She and her Pak Khawateen group, they wore them to the expedition, brought the shoes back, and they were displayed at site. This is the production hall, the stitching production hall, the image on your left where the shoes were displayed at the factory. This is a work by Suleiman Khilji. It is an EVA sheet, recycled sheet, which he used to make this huge scroll-like painting where he used natural pigment and to draw trees and to display it over there. The material was extremely weather-resistant, is extremely durable, and the artist is still fascinated to work with this material in his future endeavors. This is a work by Ali Baba, and the title is Space in Between. Ali Baba used the 3D printing facility present at the factory. He first scanned a shoe, then he scanned his feet, and then he digitally minused both of them and printed the space in between a shoe and the feet and the foot inside. And it was displayed in this huge space at the factory. This is a work by Abid Aslam. These are 6 panels where Abid Aslam created this one image, and he gave instructions to the factory workers, and all of the panels are handmade, but yet you cannot find the difference. The whole point was to understand the reproduction of the whole of the material. This is made by Rexine, present at the factory. Okay. Can you please play this? This is a video by Mohsen Shafi. It was displayed, it is a 15-channel video displayed at the factory general store, where the space actually played a huge role in giving space to these television screens and created an immersive installation of a collage of various videos that he brought in. This is a Zain by Dua Abbas. She visited the factory and she created a Zain where she wrote a fiction book, a small book, pocket size, and it was about the characters that she saw at the factory. This was a very difficult yet resolved work by Rabeya Jalil and Rabeya Adnan. The difficulty we faced was to bring the machine downstairs so that it's more accessible, but after discussions with the factory staff and the managers, it was very difficult to bring the machine downstairs, so we gave space to the machine on the rooftop for her to actually not let go of her idea, because it was very strong, and it went with what she was discovering at the factory again and again. She used coding. They used coding, colors, and with the help of the factory staff to understand mark making in this machine.
So the machine was reprogrammed to make it into a drawing device.
Yeah.
Sound is back.
Oh.
Let's go to the next one.
This is another work by Rabeya Jalil and Rabeya Adnan. It was projection mapping in a container, where it was one of the most minimal works, where Rabeya Adnan and Rabeya Jalil actually mapped the container and used it to gave an illusion that there was space in space in
cracks in the space.
cracks in the
empty.
space inside the container.
ठीक है, आगे.
This is another work by Rabeya, Jalil and Rabeya Adnan. It was displayed on the front wall of the factory, and Rabeya Jalil had CNC cut, laser cut words made at the factory, and she gave instructions to a person, to a labor worker named Allah Dita to keep pasting it on the wall for 3 days. And Allah Dita just enjoyed the whole process and decided to put his name under the instructions, which were not instructed by the artist or me or anyone else. So Allah Dita actually took ownership of the work, and it actually became one of the most powerful works, and it is in permanent collection of the factory. This is Rabeya Nasir's performance piece. Rabeya had been coming to the factory again before the opening. She has been coming to the factory and performing her. She was interacting with the workers. It wasn't even performance. It was her interaction with the workers that were present at the department. And after her conversations came out this idea that she generated, that she wanted to mend the clothes that they were wearing. She wanted to mend the holes that were in their clothes. And while she was doing it, she actually realized that all the artists that were there, she can also mend their clothes. And this is her doing what she was doing. I wouldn't call it as a performance, or it was her routine. It was her routine that she came up with at the factory. And this is Amina right beside Rabeya Nasir, who was engaged with the artist to write about her in our upcoming publication.
Rabeya sitting right here. Maybe we can talk more about the work with her in a bit. Thank you so much, Rameesha. Thank you so much for this very quick tour and comprehensive. We'll just start with our question and answer session. If we could have the lights on. Okay, maybe we can go back and see Amar Faiz's work because the sound is back. But we can see it later. Let's see how much time we have.
Okay, we'll get back to it.
Yeah, we'll get back to it at the end. Okay, so maybe the presentations don't do justice to the kind of work that went in, and it was almost a 2-year effort, the pandemic, configuring the pandemic as well. And I remember Rameesha, whenever you used to go up to her with all our very unreasonable demands, she never used to say no. And so my first question to you would be, Rameesha, how did you manage everyone's creative anxieties? It was a huge challenge, and everyone, I'm sure, felt intimidated because of that luxury of so much space and so much material and so much human resource. What was the secret?
It's a one-word answer: problem-solving mindset. If someone is coming with like you came to me with having a machine, bringing the machine downstairs, it was a huge challenge. So rather than saying no, we can always have a solution to a problem, and always have a solution to all the anxieties you may call. That were presented to me, and that's it.
Okay. So the work challenges the space and the materiality of art. But how do you think How do you think the factory was benefiting? And how do you think the factory workers responded? Because they're the ones who were dealing with and witnessing the entire process, and of course helping us throughout. What was their response?
The factory workers in the beginning were really mad about all of them coming in their space and invading their space. But then they started enjoying the routine. They started they began conversations with the artists, and they started enjoying. When the exhibition was over and we were back to our studio spaces, the factory workers came to me and they were like, "Bas, हम तो enjoy कर रहे थे, हम हमारा तो दिल कर रहा था अब फैक्ट्री आए फ्रॉम इट वाज बहुत ड्राई एक फैक्ट्री की रूटीन से हट के हमने उनको एक एक्टिविटी दी थी दैट दे देमसेल्फ एंजॉयड ओवर देयर."
Okay, but when they saw all these artists, koi darakht ulta latka raha hai, and some people having all these kind of unusual demands, or the way they generally looked at things, were there any kind of realizations for you in that process?
Yes, there were questions coming directly to the artist, to me, and to the managerial staff at the factory कि ये क्यों ख़वातीन फेर रही हैं हमारे स्पेस में, क्यों ये दरख्त तो आपने उल्टा लटका दिया, लेकिन इसका मकसद क्या है? So I think the realization that I came up with was कि we have triggered समथिंग कि एक सवाल तो ट्रिगर कर रहे हैं ना हम किसी के भी चाहे वो लेबर वर्कर्स हैं, चाहे वो स्टाफ है, चाहे वो हम खुद हैं, तो एक सवाल है कि ये क्यों है. एंड दिस विल अगेन अब वो दोबारा कुछ इस तरह का देखेंगे फैक्ट्री में या कहीं पे भी, दे विल नो कि हाँ एक ऐसी चीज़ हुई थी जो मे बी वो बिल्ड कर सकेंगे फर्दर. देयर माइंड्स मे ट्राई टू फाइंड आंसर्स फॉर दिस क्वेश्चन.
Okay, we'll talk a little more about it from Ayaz, Jokhio and Quddus, Mirza and Emaan. But my next question to you is to you, Sir Quddus. How was, and you wrote on the show as well, it was a very, very articulate piece and really beautifully, subtly written. How do you think the show was able to make connections between art and the industry, between aesthetics and commodification, and between mass production and individual expression?
How many questions are these?
This is only one question. I have plenty more. तो आप जितनी जल्दी जवाब देंगे.
Actually, what I wrote and what I felt when I went there, because thing is when you write something, then you are not really kind of remember what you have written, and not necessarily you agree what you have written like 3 weeks ago. I felt. And actually, when I was looking at the work, I was thinking, what was the factory? Where was the factory? Was the factory in Sundar Nagar state? Or were the factories in artist studios? Were they going from one factory to another factory? Or probably, I think this project was so good in one way, going back to you all of your questions, that it provided an opportunity for artists to come out of their studio where they're supposed to be free and go to a space which has no art background per se. But somehow I felt that most of them did manage to create something which was so extraordinary that in retrospective, I felt that what they kept on, some of them, I'm not talking about all, and certainly not you, and people who are present here, and people who are absent either, that some of them, and they were, when we compare works produced in the factory and the works they create in their studios, I felt that, again I say that, where was the factory? Which is the factory? Because it's a kind of a, it's almost like kind of a factory provided them a venue to think out of the box, which is supposed to be something as Dua has written in her booklet, and Mehboob Jokhio very interestingly kind of commented on this, that what, and I think majority of my text was based on Mehboob Jokhio, and I was really impressed with his work, and that how this kind of fine line between what is commodity and what is art, galleries, collectors, buyers, and shoes, factory. So I think these were, as Rameesha said, very interesting thing, that there were questions which were raised, and questions raised not only I felt among people who visited the show, open studio at that day, or people who worked over there in the factory with artists, but I think more for the artists as well. They can probably, I felt that this experience is important, because when they go back to their studios, in their workplace, in their usual situation, they may start thinking about their work through a different lens, through going after a factory. And I think all these questions are also relevant, and everyone has a different kind of answer to whatever questions you have said, answer through their work.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I have a question for you, but I think I'll take a chance to ask Ayaz Jokhio, because you ended on a point where it's really very relevant for Ayaz. Ayaz, I know you hate talking about your work, and you categorically mention that it's a joke explaining the work, and we understand your work is always self-explanatory. How, as Quddus Sahab said, how has it shaped your work? After the fact, and I'm sure for many it was the beginning of a new kind of realization, many artists. How was it different for you? Actually, why don't you answer this question first? What made you take up this project? Because you're a very busy person.
It's not what, but who made me.
Ooh, yeah, that matters.
I agree with Rameesha, because I really confidence in her. और मैं उसकी practice शुरू से देख रहा हूँ, like she was my student also. And she thinks and resolves things very intelligently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or of course the idea of factory, working in the factory was very intriguing. Factory, it's the सबसे interesting चीज़ ये थी show की कि the medium was also factory, ठीक है, or the subject was also factory for many artists. Also there was the shoe. And everyone started thinking around the shoe, what shoe plays a role or how is it made. So subject was available. तो मेरे काम भी जिस तरह it was about shoes, और बाकी काफ़ी artists हो गया, like Sabah Khan made shoe, or
Alibaba.
तो subject was also available in a way. और फिर I think factory, हर चीज़ फैक्ट्री होती है. आई थिंक हाउस इज आल्सो फैक्ट्री.
आपने भी बोला. So what was the factory? The studio space or the real?
फैक्ट्री होता है, हमारा स्टूडियो भी फैक्ट्री होता है. When I'm working in my studio, so I need materials, and I need carpenter to make my stretcher for frame. I need a factory to make canvas for me. So उस तरह से like it was very attractive कि सारी चीज़ें एक जगह आपको मिल रही है, resources. ठीक है. और जो उससे भी ज़्यादा अच्छी इंटरेस्टिंग बात थी मेरे लिए कि वो काम तो अब हम प्रोड्यूस कर सकते हैं, बिकॉज उनके पास सारे मैकेनिकल डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं, 3D प्रिंटर्स है, लेज़र कटिंग, एवरीथिंग है. लेकिन उससे ज़्यादा इंटरेस्टिंग था कि टू एग्जिबिट योर वर्क इन अनयूजुअल स्पेस, ठीक है, विच इज़ नॉट लाइक वाइट क्यूब. तो वो बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग था. आई थिंक हमेशा रहता है हमारे लिए इंटरेस्टिंग, क्योंकि जब आप ये क्वेश्चन करते हैं ना कि व्हाट इज़ आर्ट एंड व्हाट्स नॉट आर्ट, ठीक है, तो वो क्वेश्चन ये नहीं कि सिर्फ फैक्ट्री में था, वो गैलरी में भी होता है. ठीक है, व्हेन यू लुक एट अ पेंटिंग इन अ गैलरी, आप स्टार्ट अब ये सवाल करते हैं कि आर्ट है कि नहीं है. तो वो इट्स अ पर्सनल क्वेश्चन फॉर एवरीवन, इंडिविजुअल, आप खुद रिजॉल्व करते हैं उसके लिए. तो हाँ, तो ये सारी चीज़ें थी मेरे दिमाग में, नॉट कि मैं उस वक्त सोच रहा था, लेकिन it is in the back of your mind.
Part of you. But how has it shaped your work? And I know it's maybe too early to say it, but how has it? How has that experience shaped your work?
I think मैं उससे पहले ही काम कर रहा था, जिससे आपको पता है, I was interested in puppets.
Yeah, the Karachi Biennale.
तो मेरे लिए सबसे जो इंटरेस्टिंग चीज़ थी वो इनका मैकेनिकल डिपार्टमेंट था, जो मैं अपने स्टूडियो पे शायद नहीं कर सकता उस तरह से. So I think I wanted to do something with automation. I knew it from the beginning. और एक और अच्छी बात जो शो की थी, हमारे पास एक पूरा साल था. पूरा साल इस तरह भी था कि कोविड की वजह से बढ़ता गया. आई थिंक वरना नहीं था शायद. रमीशा प्लान टू हैव इट.
रमीशा का बचा था तो हमसे एक महीने में काम करवा लेती.
लेकिन दिस इज वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग. आई थिंक इतना टाइम होना चाहिए किसी भी शो के लिए. हम जो डेडलाइंस को मीट कर बैठ जाते हैं ना, तो काम में वो एक मैच्योरिटी एक तरह से ख़त्म हो जाती है आपके. लेकिन मैंने सबसे पहले जो सोचा था वो बाकी साल में उसी पे बैठा रहा, एंड में वही किया मैंने. बल्कि मैं इंतज़ार करता रहा कोई नया आइडिया आएगा इस तरह से, तो लेकिन हाँ उस तरह हो रहा था. हाँ.
And it worked for you.
Hi.
Okay. So let's go to Emaan. Emaan is the publication editor. So this project is a collaboration with the Vassal Artists Collective, and it has multiple legs. One was the project, the exhibition that you just witnessed. You witnessed the summary of it. Then we have a publication which is not just a coverage of the artworks, but it's also a literary publication, and we'll talk about it just in a bit. And the third leg is a documentary, which is also in collaboration with Vassal, and Rameesha will tell us a little more about it. But Emaan, my question to you is that the publication that we're working on, it's about to, and it's almost done. It engages 8 literary writers who witnessed the work of the exhibiting artists, but they also responded to the factory. So how is this publication different to any other project, and how is it a combination of art and literature?
Well, it's actually just that, because as we were talking about how the factory is the subject, well, the writers are also responding to the factory. So we wanted to have literary writers. We didn't want to have artists to do the writing because we wanted visual artists. You know, we wanted to give them that freedom, and we wanted to bring in a different element.
And you can't trust artists to write. They always do a terrible job. I think it's just a
I wouldn't
disaster.
say that, at least not publicly.
Well, some of them
But we
do
wanted
write
to
well.
we wanted to give, you know, writers a chance to write, because that is exactly what they do, and we wanted them to bring in their creativity and their own elements to it. So, you know, when Rameesha and I first talked about it, instantly I was like, okay, I want to have literary writers on board, because, you know, they can do what they do best. They can respond to it as well. So the best part is that we had them involved from the very beginning of the process. It wasn't just that they would come to the exhibition and they would see the artworks like the audience. So our writers actually went to the studios, they came to the factory, they discussed the philosophy, everything that had to do with the process, and they obviously came to the exhibition as well. And that is how they responded to it. And some of them wrote about the process, some of them wrote about the philosophy, some of them wrote about, you know, their own experience. So it's not one type of writing anyway. It's a whole, it's a lot of different types of writing.
Yeah, and then short stories as well, a lot
yes,
of fiction.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's part one, and then part two is that the writers are actually responding to the factory itself or to the artworks, and they've done it all brilliantly, and they've done it, you know, in many different ways. There's poetry, there's short stories, there's a script, you know, there's everything, and yeah.
Can you name the writers very quickly?
Yes, of course. So we have Maham Qureshi and Jawad Raza, who are also here today. Zarmeena Rafi, Urud Samdhani, Basirat Zehra. We have Zarmeena Rafi. I'm also one of the writers. And we have Hassan Tahir, Hassan Rauf, Arsalan Athar. And I hope I haven't missed anyone. I've been talking to them for so long that I don't think it's possible for me to forget them.
Okay. So my next question. Thank you, Emaan, for filling us in, and My next question actually is to all of you, and I would like actually to Quddus. I'd like Quddus Saab to perhaps answer first. So if it weren't, and this is for everyone, anyone can reply. If it weren't for a guided tour, the space was a spectacle for any outsider who would come in because of its huge structures and these production houses, the recycling plant, even the dump yard. So कोई भी बाहर से आएगा उसको हर चीज़ ही stimulating लगेगी. So how were we to tell, if it weren't a guided tour, where was art, and was it important? Where do you think we draw the line of when something becomes a work of art?
Well, that's very difficult to decide, because I recall reading Jean Baudelaire's essay, and he said that things which we regard now as work of art were not created as work of art, like African masks or some Chinese writing or various other things from history. And he said that things which we now believe are works of art, I wonder in 500 years' time or 1,000 years' time what these things will be considered at that time. So I think that line probably that is a line which kind of galleries, art institutions, art critics, art writers have created. For public, I think there is no difference between what is art and what is not art. Something which speaks to you is important, regardless how you label it, regardless how you call it. And I think when you go to, when I went to the first day, I enjoyed many things. I enjoyed things which were created by, again, Ayaz, Jokhio, Hassan Mujtaba, several others. And I enjoyed things which were lying as scrap material. And those things were also created by someone. Though we don't really tell them that these are artists, we don't really name them, or sometimes you put name of Aladita, but that's a different story altogether. But those things were also created. And if those things are created by nature, God is also is a creator. वो एक कुरान में है ना अल्लाह ताला के बारे में मुसव्विर और इस तरह से. So I think for me it is more important how I interact with them and how these things interact with me, what they say to me and how I respond to them. It doesn't matter, because you think academically an artist who's kind of creating work in his or her studio for 30 years, and as soon as the person leaves this world, and it does happen, everything goes to dust. They become redundant. They become worthless. And suddenly someone is being discovered, and who was not really trained as an artist, and whatever he or she did was not intended as a work of art, and now we enjoy it, now we look at them. So I think that line for me is really not important. Sorry about...
Yeah, absolutely. No, why should you be sorry? Who else would? Ayaz, would you like to respond to that?
I think वो जो है what's art and what's not art, I think अभी तक हम डिसाइड करते हैं, आर्टिस्ट खुद डिसाइड करता है ये कि मैं कर रहा हूँ आर्ट है. एक जो थ्योरी ऑफ इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइजेशन भी है कि जब आप चीज़ें गैलरी में आएंगी तो आर्ट बन जाएंगी. तो आई थिंक इट्स मोर ऑफ अ व्यूअर्स जॉब टू डिसाइड व्हाट स्पीक्स टू हिम. ठीक है, और दैट्स आर्ट टू मी.
What about your claim and your intent?
इवन यू नो मैं कोई आर्ट बनाता भी हूँ तो डजंट मीन इट्स एन आर्ट रियली. ठीक है, it has to speak to the viewer, to the audience, otherwise it has no meaning. ठीक, हाँ. And also artist की job जो है ना वो भी एक viewer की job है. Making is a one part of your work, but then you have to look at your work as a viewer. Okay, does it speak to you, and then you approve it to show it to the others. ठीक, तो what's art is a viewer's job, I think, if it speaks to you. हाँ. और वो जो भी चीज़ हो, लाइक डजंट मैटर कि आर्टिस्ट ने क्रिएट किया या किसी प्लम्बर ने क्रिएट किया है, इफ इट स्पीक्स टू यू दैट इट्स आर्ट.
Okay, thank you, Ayaz. Rameesha, Emaan.
Yeah, I think absolutely. There were so many writers. I mean, I was, there with some of them while they were having their discussions with the artist, and they picked up on so many things that the artist didn't tell them directly. Or didn't talk to them about, but they picked up on them and they thought that they were beautiful and they wrote about them, and they themselves enhanced it. So I guess art is, I agree, it depends on the viewer, and we can all come up with many different ways to interpret it, and I think that's the best part. I like that it's not limited and that we can all make something out of it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to make a documentary or have a publication or even have such a big exhibition.
Okay, great. Rameesha, I'll ask you another question since we're running a little out of time and we have plenty of questions. Your work, even at the collateral at Lahore Biennale in 2020, was about alternate spaces, and we've observed in the last maybe 3, 4, 5 years this this development and growth of all these alternate spaces of exhibition, be it the Fakir Khana Museum or the Dayal Singh Haveli lately, or the Iqbal residence, or even people's own residence, particularly this new generation, Gen Z and millennials, they perhaps sometimes don't care for mainstream galleries so much. They would much rather open a startup of their own and have their own gallery. So when we're talking about alternate spaces and new audiences, we'll talk about alternate spaces in a bit, but let's talk about the new audiences that generates. And you claim, even in this particular show, that it has, or and it ought to generate new audiences. Do you think this factory did generate that kind of fresh audience?
Of course, it did. The factory very much generated new audience because the factory has 800 labor workers present over there, and those labor workers, I don't know what their qualifications are. Maybe they do study art. Why do we assume that they don't? Maybe they don't. But one thing I know of, that with their routine at a factory, they do not go to gallery spaces to witness art. So, first of all, what is an audience? An audience is a person who views something, anything. So, them being the viewer, being present over there, is an audience that was created with the creation of art simultaneously. So that was inevitable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And what I have to add here, that Rameesha, the CEO of the factory, happens to be Rameesha's father also. And every time we used to visit the factory, we used to have food, have a really good time, और हम वापस चले जाते थे. And he became curious कि ये क्या कर रहे हैं और ये कब काम खत्म करेंगे, because he didn't see. It's very maybe perhaps an artist's way of working is different from other people, or we at least claim it to be. And it's a very slow, simmering process. And so what was your father's response? Because he was very patient throughout the process, and he wanted outputs, just like anyone else.
So my father used to come and sit and talk to all the artists we used to have this huge dining table where we used to all feed along with my father and some employees. And he used to question, आप क्या कर रही हैं, आप क्या कर रहे हैं, अच्छा आपका क्या चल रहा है, आपकी ये problem है. So at first he was not understanding कि मुझे immediate कुछ नज़र नहीं आ रहा और क्या है, क्या सोची जा रहे हो, बस सोचते रहना है. So things like that. But on the day of the exhibition, he again, I was busy with the opening. He texted me, "Congratulations, I'm proud of you." And I think that's
meant a lot for you. Yeah. Okay. Quddus Sab, in your article, you also talked about you became busy in your phone. Okay. You were Googling my answer.
Well, so I already kind of...
Okay. So let's just talk about the role and function of art. You did particularly...
What?
The role. Let's just talk about the role and function. Let's talk about the role and function of art. Kuch kaamon mein, in your article also, you mentioned that some artists kind of challenged and also kind of maybe elaborated on that function and the role. And for some, it wasn't just mere beautification or aesthetics. Would you like to talk a little about that? And how did that factory, how was the factory able to deal with it or respond to it?
Yeah, I think, again, I go back to Mahbub Jokhio's work, because that the work itself was so deceptive that even if you don't read the intricate text or do not recognize the context of his labels, so you think that that's a factory line boxes, shoe boxes. So probably I think, I feel that there can be many rules and many functions for artwork. First, as Ayaz Jokhio said, that as artist, you become your own viewer as well. So the first rule is kind of in order to make you understand about world as a maker, about world, about yourself. It's a kind of art is like a mirror, which where you see yourself and you see yourself in the context of Because whenever I look at mirror, I think mirror is a great invention because it seems to be self-centered, but it's not self-centered because I can't really see myself. I see myself in surrounding of other things as well. So, and I think art is also like that, that when an artist is creating that work, so that person brings it out. And whenever we look at art, we look at a work as physically placed somewhere, and I think as a kind of metaphorically as well, we see the work in the context of what other things have been created, and maybe we start looking at someone else's work. Through that, it can remind us various things, what we have read, what we have seen, what we may have been thinking about that. So it's a kind of probably more than a physical function, or more than something like kind of a, people think society like to kind of society के अंदर कोई contribution करना इस तरह की. It's a kind of a way of self-recognition, self-realization for a person, for a group of people, and for the entire society as well.
Yeah. Okay. Quddus, you keep mentioning Ayaz, Jokhio, and Mehboob Jokhio.
Mehboob is sitting here.
Ji, so you keep mentioning only these two names. Would you like to talk about some other artists also?
Yes. Mehboob Shah. No.
He wasn't part of the show,
But,
unfortunately.
we were not. Are we supposed to talk about? Rabeya Jalil and Rabeya Adnan. No, actually the thing is they because works were so different, and it's almost like kind of probably my limitation, because when I am at an airport and various people are sitting there in an international airport and they're speaking different languages and everyone is talking in a probably profound things, but I'll be understand only those things which have been uttered in English or said in Urdu, or I can hear Punjabi as well and I can understand. That's my limitation. I think that's my preference and that's my choice, and that's my the way I see things. So for me, I pick some artist, but it doesn't mean that the rest of the works were not important. They were, and I think I felt that all of these artists really did some extraordinary works. For instance, that chandelier, Hassan Mustafa's chandelier, and that tree, what was his name? Fez? Huh? Faizan. Some, like, you keep on thinking, and it's kind of I think the scale itself was so important, and so like kind of because when I look at this on that scale, but then I recall the entire tree which was uprooted and it was like kind of placed upside down. That was like a remarkable thing. We just say these things in a sentence, but to think, to create, to produce that takes so long, as Ayaz's work or Mehboob's work as well.
बिल्कुल टांग वहीं पे टूट गई आके. Okay, so let's just go towards winding up with perhaps two last questions. Anyone is welcome to reply to this, and this is something I mentioned earlier also about alternate spaces and mainstream spaces. Validation, obviously, जैसा अयाज ने भी बोला, आपने भी बोला, काम तब complete होता है जब उसकी audience होती है, when it's only complete when it has a viewer and when it kind of creates a kind of a community or a collaborative experience. But at the end of the day, it matters where that work is being exhibited, who is coming to see it, who is getting to write on it. All these matter, and especially now in the last 3-4 years, centers dissipate ho gaye, disperse ho gaye, and as much as there is a lot of option to where we're exhibiting, validation systems or patronage systems bhi expand ho rahe hain. How do you think these validation systems and patronage systems are being, how are the forms changing? Or do you think we would still seek authenticity in those mainstream centers? So what I'm trying to say is that when we're kind of expanding, how are the forms of validation and patronage changing, and is it a good thing for art or for generally creative expression?
I think जो आर्ट की पैटर्न है ना इट्स मोर प्रॉब्लमेटिक इन अ वे. वो आर्ट को किसी और डायरेक्शन में ले जाती है और इट हैज़ मेड इट लाइक एलिटिस्ट थिंग. वो है उसका मसला जिस तरह की पैटर्न जो हमारी हो रही है. बट आई थिंक उसके अलावा जो आर्ट क्रिएट होता है जिसको कोई एक्सपोजर नहीं मिलता यू कैन से. और like I always like younger artists, you know, who are still struggling, but they have such brilliant ideas, you know. और कोई ज़रूरी नहीं होता कि उसको वैलिडेशन वहीं से मिलेगी वहाँ से. बट ऑफ कोर्स इट इज़ अ ग्रेट इंकरेजमेंट. अगर आपको पैसा मिलता है, आप यू स्टार्ट सेलिंग, तो यू कैन प्रोड्यूस मोर बेटर वर्क. वो होता है. अदरवाइज इट्स नॉट द क्राइटेरिया फॉर यू नो आर्टिस्ट इन आर्ट.
It's not anymore because we also have so many other platforms
it's not.
that are kind of acknowledging all you know, the various kinds of work that are being produced. Rameesha, you have something to say?
Being a young graduate and being a young enthusiast about art and a creative person, I would say that the minute you graduate, creating art is more important than being validated. If you focus on creating art, validation is a byproduct. If you focus on being validated first and then you create art, that's problematic. So for me, being just freshly graduated and looking at the world from my lens, I focus on making art. And that's the most important thing.
Okay. Let's just also talk about the documentary that is being made as a third leg of the project. How is it different from any other documentary, and how are you kind of expanding on those formats, Rameesha?
There was the questions were raised by a lot of people who couldn't come to the site. They were like, ऐसा क्या था वहाँ पे जो हमें तस्वीरों में तो कुछ भी उस तरह से बस बैरल्स खड़े हुए हैं या पोल खड़ा हुआ है. So the documentary will actually encapsulate will try its best to encapsulate the experience through infographics and animations, where we will be talking about the ideas that were conceived over there in its best possible representation.
Okay, thank you, Emaan. Emaan, would you like to talk about the book? And when are we getting to see it in its published form?
Yes, as Rameesha was saying that, you know, she's talking about the documentary, the book, which is the second leg of this project, well, it's going to help continue. You know, you have the exhibition, it was on for like a week. 10 days, and you know, the exhibition, I mean, yes, the artworks are there in some capacity, they will, you know, disperse, but with the publication and with the documentary, you have them, the audience which can't buy the artwork can have the publication, can have the writers, you know, words on it, and can have obviously the short stories and the responses. They can take that with them, so it's a piece that everyone can have. And it's not just a publication of the factory, it's not a publication of an exhibition, it is in a way a part of it, because it is something in itself. So we're doing something as a response. In a way, you can say it is a writer's response. As we had the exhibition for the artists, the book is, you can say it's the exhibition for the writers, because their work is going to be showcased in that. So I mean, it is definitely the second leg, but it's something that everyone can have a piece of, and it's something that we
independent
really
work.
Yeah, it's independent.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's something that we really tried, you know, to create something that's different, at least in the Pakistani context. And you know, we want it to be the start of many things. It's not just that, oh, we've done this and it's over. It's just the start of many such projects.
Absolutely, and I think the factory also is the beginning of many such projects for the artists, for the curator. Thank you so much for being a lovely audience. We've got to wind up because we have audience for the next session coming in. But we thank you Quddus Saab, thank you Ayaz,
Thank you.
thank you
Thank you.
Emaan, thank you Rameesha. Thank you. We'd like to,
and we'll be launching the book soon. So unfortunately we couldn't bring it today, and I hope that you all can come for that as well.
thank you. Thank you.